When most people hear the phrase quantum shifting, their mind instantly paints it as something impossible, mystical, or reserved for enlightened masters. They imagine rituals under the stars, arcane words whispered in secret, or endless years of training to touch realities beyond the visible. That belief, that shifting realities must be complicated, is the very illusion that keeps them locked in the same patterns. The paradox is simple. Quantum shifting is not magic, and it is not beyond you. It is natural, mechanical, and easier than you have been taught to believe. The only reason it feels so difficult is because you have been conditioned to think that transformation must involve struggle. But what if the struggle is the block, not the process? Our culture loves to worship effort. We are told that if something is valuable, it must be earned through blood, sweat, and resistance. Success must be hard. Change must be grueling. And when people approach manifestation with that mindset, they expect shifting to require immense effort too. They carry this belief into every practice, hours of affirmations, forcing visualizations, pushing against their own doubts. Yet quantum shifting is not about effort at all. It is about alignment. And alignment, unlike struggle, does not require strain. Alignment is like a key sliding into the lock. It doesn't demand force, it demands precision. Physics reveals this truth in its most basic principles. Before observation, particles exist in a state of superposition, infinite possibilities hovering as waves of potential. When observed, the wave collapses into one specific outcome. That collapse is instantaneous. It does not strain, it does not wrestle, it simply is. The wave does not work harder to become a particle. It does not struggle into existence. It responds instantly to the conditions of observation. Likewise, you do not need to grind your way into a new reality. You simply need to meet the condition of coherence, and collapse happens naturally. The illusion of difficulty comes from trying to force what is meant to flow. Here is the incomplete puzzle that most never see. If shifting is simple, why does it feel so impossible for so many? The answer is not in the mechanics, but in the mind. The process itself is easy. The hard part is that people are addicted to their old identities, addicted to rehearsing the same emotions, addicted to the narrative that this is who I am. That addiction makes the new state feel unreachable, not because it is complicated, but because the old state feels safer. Familiar suffering feels more comfortable than unfamiliar freedom, and so the brain convinces you that change must be hard, because anything outside the known feels dangerous. In truth, it is not dangerous. It is simply unfamiliar. Think about your own life. How many times have you stopped yourself from stepping into something greater because the voice inside said, "It can't be that easy"? That voice is not wisdom. It is fear disguised as logic. It is your nervous system clinging to what it already knows. Neuroscience shows us that the brain is wired for efficiency. It prefers to repeat old circuits rather than build new ones, because repetition consumes less energy. But energy efficiency is not the same as truth. Just because the old self feels easier to inhabit does not mean it is your only option. Shifting is easier than you think, because once you commit to embodying the new, your brain begins to rewire almost immediately. The difficulty was never in the collapse, it was in your resistance to letting go of the old. Here's the pattern interrupt. Struggle is not proof of progress. In fact, struggle is often proof of misalignment. When you are pushing, forcing, grinding against yourself, you are confirming that the reality you want is far away. You are rehearsing separation instead of embodying closeness. But when you relax into coherence, when your thoughts, emotions, and body agree, you collapse the desired reality instantly, with no resistance. What if it was never about fighting harder, but about allowing more deeply? Consider the way water flows. A river does not strain to reach the ocean. It does not agonize over every bend in its path. It simply follows the current, and gravity does the rest. Quantum shifting is the same. The field is already moving. Potential is already infinite. Collapse is already natural. You do not need to create the river. You only need to stop building dams of doubt and resistance. The illusion of difficulty is the dam. The shift itself is the current. And here is the curiosity loop to carry forward. If the process is this natural, this effortless, why have you been convinced it is so hard? Who benefits from you believing change requires struggle? What happens when you finally accept that the door has always been unlocked, and all you had to do was push it gently open? This question lingers not as a riddle, but as an invitation, because the moment you stop believing the lie of difficulty, you step into the truth of collapse. And when that truth takes root, reality shifts in ways that feel less like a fight and more like remembering what was always yours. At first glance, quantum shifting may sound abstract, even mysterious. But the truth is that its foundation rests on some of the most studied principles in modern physics. The universe itself is structured around possibility. At the subatomic level, particles are not fixed objects moving through empty space. They are waves of probability, existing in countless states simultaneously. This condition is called superposition. A single electron, for example, is not here or there until observed. It is here and there, in all potential locations at once, until something collapses that potential into one outcome. This is the mechanism of reality, infinite possibility, narrowed into actuality through collapse. Now consider what this means for you. Your life is not a rigid, predetermined line. It is a field of infinite versions of you, all existing in superposition, wealthy and struggling, free and stuck, loved and lonely, healthy and sick. These are not fantasies, they are probabilities. And just as particles collapse into specific outcomes when observed, your consciousness collapses one of these versions into the life you live. This is why shifting realities is not magic. It is physics expressed through biology and awareness. You are the observer, and your body is the measuring device through which the collapse happens. Neuroscience helps us bridge the gap between physics and lived experience. When neurons fire together repeatedly, they wire together, forming circuits that become the brain's preferred pathways. Over time, these circuits stabilize into what we call habits, beliefs, and identity. If your nervous system is wired to expect disappointment, your brain automatically filters reality through that lens, collapsing probabilities that match disappointment. If your circuits are rewired toward trust, gratitude, and abundance, your brain filters for opportunities and collapses realities aligned with expansion. The science is clear. Your perception is not passive. It is an active mechanism that selects which version of reality crystallizes. But here lies the incomplete puzzle. If the mechanics of collapse are so universal, why do most people continue to experience the same struggles year after year? The answer is coherence, or rather, the lack of it. The quantum field does not respond to fragmented signals. If your thoughts say one thing, your emotions another, and your body another still, the signal you broadcast is static. The collapse defaults to the strongest, most familiar frequency, usually the one tied to old emotions and identities. This is why so many people feel trapped, even while visualizing new realities. Their biology is collapsing the past, not the future. Here's the pattern interrupt. You are not failing to manifest. You are manifesting constantly. Every thought, every emotion, every state of being is collapsing a version of reality right now. The problem is not whether collapse happens. It always does. The real question is whether you are collapsing deliberately or unconsciously. When you leave it unconscious, your nervous system recycles the old, collapsing the same story again and again. But when you cultivate coherence, aligning thought, feeling, and body, you send a clear signal into the field, and the field has no choice but to respond. Heart coherence research confirms this. When the rhythm of the heart becomes smooth and ordered, brain waves synchronize, the nervous system regulates, and the body shifts from survival into creation. In this state, the electromagnetic field you generate expands, radiating coherence into the space around you. That signal interacts with the quantum field, collapsing probabilities into alignment with your embodied state. You do not force this collapse. You allow it, because coherence is the natural language the field responds to. The science of shifting is not about control. It is about consistency. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. Two people walk into the same room. One is anxious, rehearsing old fears. The other is calm, radiating stability. Though both experience the same environment, their bodies collapse different realities within it. The anxious person notices threats, judgments, and reasons to confirm their fear. The calm person perceives opportunities, openness, and pathways forward. The external environment is identical, yet their internal coherence collapses entirely different experiences. This is the essence of quantum shifting. It is not about changing the external world first, but about collapsing a different version of reality within the same environment. And here is the curiosity loop you must hold. If shifting is as simple as achieving coherence, what keeps you from living in that state more often? The answer is not complexity, it is habit. You are accustomed to incoherence. You are accustomed to believing that effort equals results, that struggle equals proof, that the old story is safer than the new one. But what happens when you train your nervous system to prefer coherence instead? What happens when the default state of your biology is alignment, not survival? The science suggests something remarkable. Shifting becomes effortless, because collapse is no longer random, it is chosen. If quantum shifting is not magic, and if science confirms it is simpler than we think, then why does it still feel unreachable for so many people? The answer is not in the field itself, nor in the mechanics of collapse. The real barrier is identity. Who you believe yourself to be determines which reality you collapse, no matter how much you visualize, hope, or affirm otherwise. This is why you can practice techniques for years and still feel stuck. Because beneath the surface, your identity is broadcasting the opposite signal. Neville Goddard's timeless teaching illuminates this with piercing clarity. You do not manifest what you want, you manifest who you are. If you identify as someone who is struggling, then no matter how many affirmations you repeat, the field will collapse the reality of struggle. If you identify as someone who is unlucky in love, your nervous system will filter every interaction to confirm that belief. Identity is the anchor of collapse. You may wish for something different, but unless you embody a new self, collapse defaults to the old. Neuroscience provides the biological evidence. Every belief you hold is etched into neural circuits that fire automatically, shaping your perception of reality. These circuits are efficient. They conserve energy by filtering out experiences that contradict your expectations. If your brain believes money is scarce, it literally suppresses opportunities that prove otherwise. You will overlook them, dismiss them, or sabotage them unconsciously. The collapse will reinforce scarcity, because that is the identity your biology knows. This is not the universe withholding from you. It is your nervous system collapsing coherence with what you already embody. Here's the pattern interrupt. The greatest barrier to shifting is not the complexity of the process, but your addiction to the old self. We mistake familiarity for truth. Even suffering feels safe if it is known. The brain clings to old emotional states, fear, worry, self-doubt, because they are familiar signals. And each time you replay them, you collapse the same version of reality again. The illusion is not that shifting is difficult. The illusion is that you are the person you have always been. Once that illusion dissolves, shifting becomes inevitable. Identity is not static, it is programmable. Just as neurons wire together through repetition, they can also rewire. Belief systems can be unlearned. Emotional addictions can be broken. The key is to stop negotiating with the old self and begin embodying the new one, even before there is visible evidence. This is why Neville urged his students to live in the end, to embody the state of the wish fulfilled as though it were already true. Joe Dispenza explains the same principle scientifically. When you combine intention with elevated emotion, your body begins to believe the future has already arrived. And once your biology accepts that new identity, collapse follows automatically. But here is the incomplete puzzle. If it's so simple, why doesn't everyone do it? Because identity feels invisible. We believe our thoughts are who we are, our emotions are natural, our stories are fixed. We rarely question them. And yet identity is nothing more than a collection of repeated states. Change the state, and you change the identity. Change the identity, and you collapse a new reality. The problem is not that it is impossible. The problem is that most people never step far enough outside of themselves to see that their truth is only a habit. Let's bring this closer with an example. Imagine two people standing at the edge of opportunity. One believes, "I am someone who always fails." The other believes, "I am someone who adapts and thrives." Both face the same external conditions, but their internal signals collapse entirely different outcomes. The first sees obstacles and confirms failure. The second sees possibilities and creates progress. Identity determined the collapse, not effort, not luck, not circumstance, which means that the barrier is never the field. It is always the self you embody. Here's the curiosity loop to hold open. What if the version of you who already has what you desire is not far away, but is already alive within you, waiting to be chosen? What if shifting realities is not about becoming someone new, but about stopping the rehearsal of the old? That question is not meant to be answered immediately. It is meant to echo in you, pulling you into the next step. Because once you see that identity is flexible, shifting stops being complicated. It becomes the most natural thing in the world. By now, the mystery has been stripped away. Quantum shifting is not reserved for the gifted or the chosen, and it is not an impossible feat. It is the natural collapse of probability into form, guided by the identity you embody. Which means that if you want to shift deliberately, you don't need grand rituals or secret codes. You need simple, consistent practices that align your thoughts, emotions, and body into coherence. Simplicity is not weakness. Simplicity is power, because it removes resistance and stabilizes the signal you send into the field. The first practice is the breath. It sounds almost too ordinary, but ordinary is exactly where the extraordinary hides. Research shows that when you slow your breathing, extending your exhale longer than your inhale, the heart enters coherence. That coherence synchronizes with brain waves, quieting the noise of stress and aligning the nervous system. In those moments, the body is no longer signaling fear or lack. It is broadcasting harmony, and harmony is the language the field understands. If you practice nothing else but 5 minutes of coherent breathing every day, you would begin to notice shifts in how reality responds to you. The practice is simple, but its effects ripple into everything. The second practice is embodied imagination. Too many people approach visualization like wishful thinking, looking at their desire as though it is far away. But to collapse a reality, you must imagine from within it. Close your eyes and place yourself in the middle of the scene. Feel the textures, hear the sounds, taste the air. Let your body rehearse the emotions of already being there. Neuroscience proves that the brain cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a lived one. The same circuits fire, the same hormones are released. Each time you imagine in this way, you teach your nervous system that the new reality is already familiar, and the field responds by collapsing probabilities to match. The third practice is sleep. The minutes before you drift off at night are the most potent gateway into your subconscious. In that state, your brain shifts into slower theta waves, and the door between conscious intention and unconscious programming swings wide open. If you fall asleep replaying fears and disappointments, you instruct your subconscious to reinforce them all night long. But if you fall asleep in gratitude, rehearsing the emotions of your desired reality, your subconscious carries that vibration through hours of rest, imprinting it deeper than waking practice ever could. Night after night, you are either collapsing your past or collapsing your future, depending on what you carry into sleep. The fourth practice is micro-habits. Collapse is not only about inner states, but about outer reinforcement. Every small action that reflects the identity you want strengthens coherence. If you are collapsing into health, choose a single daily action that reflects health. If you are collapsing into abundance, make one decision each day as though abundance is already yours. These actions may seem insignificant, but the nervous system reads them as evidence. They reinforce the story you are embodying, and the more evidence your biology accepts, the stronger the collapse becomes. But here's the incomplete puzzle. If these practices are so simple, why do most people abandon them? The answer is hidden in their very simplicity. People expect something complicated, something dramatic. They dismiss breathing, imagination, or gratitude as too easy, forgetting that reality itself operates on simplicity. Collapse is not about adding more. It is about removing contradiction. The practices are designed to clear static, to stabilize coherence, and once coherence is achieved, the shift unfolds naturally. The difficulty was never in the mechanics, it was in believing that only struggle could produce results. Here's the pattern interrupt. What if ease itself is the proof you are on the right path? What if the shift is not meant to feel like climbing a mountain but like remembering how to walk? This flips the narrative we've been taught, that pain and effort prove progress. In the quantum field, the opposite is true. The easier it feels, the closer you are to coherence. Ease is not weakness. Ease is alignment. And now, to anchor this understanding in action, I want you to declare it. Go to the comments and type this phrase. I allow the shift to be easy, not as a wish, not as a hope, but as a decision. Let it be the first micro-habit you embody right now, the ritual of declaring that simplicity is enough. Each time you see those words, they will remind you that collapse does not require strain. It requires surrender, and surrender is always easier than struggle. Spiritual traditions echo this truth across centuries. The Tao speaks of Wu Wei, effortless action in harmony with the flow of the universe. Mystics describe the path of least resistance as the path of greatest power. Even modern science affirms that systems in coherence require less energy to produce greater effects. The message is the same. Ease is not an accident. It is the natural consequence of alignment. So hold this open loop in your mind. If quantum shifting is easier than you think, what would happen if you finally stopped expecting it to be hard? What realities would collapse into your life if you allowed simplicity to be your strategy? The answer is waiting in the silence, ready to be chosen. When you begin to allow shifting to be simple, something remarkable happens. The effects extend far beyond the quiet practices you perform in private. Like waves traveling outward from a single drop, your inner state ripples into the field, reorganizing circumstances, relationships, and opportunities. What began as ease within you becomes change all around you. This is the ripple of effortless shifts, the silent expansion of coherence into the fabric of reality itself. Most people underestimate how far these ripples reach. They imagine that a change in thought or feeling stays trapped inside their own mind. But physics tells a different story. Every coherent state you embody radiates through your electromagnetic field, which extends several feet beyond your body. Instruments can measure it. Other nervous systems can sense it. And the quantum field, which connects all probability, responds to it. When you stabilize coherence, you are not just shifting your experience, you are influencing the probabilities available to everyone and everything connected to you. This is why environments change when you change. A person radiating fear walks into a room and tension rises. A person radiating calm enters the same room and people breathe easier without knowing why. These are micro ripples of state, invisible but contagious. Now imagine what happens when you sustain the vibration of your desired reality, not for minutes, but for days, weeks, months. The ripple strengthens into a wave. That wave begins bending events into alignment, drawing in synchronicities that seem miraculous to outsiders, but are simply physics unfolding. Here's the incomplete puzzle. If the ripple is so powerful, why do people still believe their efforts don't matter? Because the first ripples are invisible. Just like a seed sprouting roots beneath the soil, the field reorganizes in silence before evidence appears. In those early days, doubt creeps in. People abandon the practice, convinced nothing is working, when in truth everything is already shifting. The wave is still traveling outward. The evidence has not reached the visible shore yet. If you could see how much was already moving in the unseen, you would never doubt again. Consider the stories we call miracles. A person practices gratitude quietly, without telling anyone, and within months, financial opportunities suddenly appear. Another falls asleep each night embodying love, and relationships heal without confrontation. From the outside, it looks like chance. From the inside, it is the ripple of effortless shifts. What appeared sudden was only the moment the invisible wave reached the visible world. Every transformation that seems overnight is, in truth, the culmination of ripples that began long before. Neuroscience confirms this ripple effect in the brain as well. Mirror neurons fire both when we act and when we observe others acting. This means that your state influences not only your own perception, but also the people around you. When you embody calm, others feel calm. When you embody abundance, others unconsciously expand their sense of possibility. You do not need to preach or persuade. The ripple does the work. Identity broadcasts louder than words. Here's the pattern interrupt you must remember. Effortless shifts do not mean passive shifts. Ease is not the absence of influence. Ease is the amplification of influence. The less resistance you hold, the clearer your signal, and the clearer your signal, the more undeniable the ripple becomes. Effortless shifts are not weaker, they are stronger, because they conserve energy for coherence instead of wasting it on contradiction. Spiritual traditions have always known this. The Tao speaks of harmony spreading like water, shaping landscapes without force. Mystics describe the aura of a transformed person as a fragrance others cannot ignore. Even modern psychology observes that presence itself, silent, coherent presence, has more impact than speeches or arguments. The ripple of effortless shifts is universal. It does not require recognition to be real. It only requires consistency. And here's the curiosity loop that carries us forward. If small silent practices ripple outward into massive external change, what happens when you make effortless coherence your default way of being? What happens when you stop collapsing by accident and begin collapsing deliberately, again and again, until the ripple becomes a tidal wave? The answer is not far away. It is already moving through the field, waiting for you to notice how much has changed because you allowed it to be easy. The greatest illusion of all is that quantum shifting is reserved for the few, that only mystics, saints, or visionaries have access to it. But by now you have seen the truth. Shifting is not magic, and it is not out of reach. It is the natural process of collapse, the constant selection of probabilities through the state you embody. The only difference between those who shift deliberately and those who don't is awareness. Once you know that collapse is always happening, the question is no longer if you can shift, but how consciously you will do it. Living the ease of quantum shifting means releasing the obsession with effort. It means no longer chasing reality as if it is separate from you. It means recognizing that the version of life you desire already exists in superposition, and your only task is to embody the self for whom that life is already true. This is not struggle, this is surrender. And surrender is easier than we have been taught to believe. Science and spirituality converge here. Physics shows that collapse is instantaneous. A wave does not strain into becoming a particle. It simply becomes when the conditions are met. Neuroscience shows that the brain rewires quickly when emotion and repetition align, pruning away the old circuits and reinforcing the new. Spirituality reminds us that faith, assumption, and surrender have always been the real engines of transformation. Put them together and you see it clearly. Collapse is not effortful. Collapse is easeful. This is why struggle has always been the wrong compass. If you are pushing harder and harder, forcing reality to bend, you are confirming separation. You are telling the field, I am not there yet. And the field responds accordingly. But when you embody ease, when you breathe into coherence, imagine from within, sleep in gratitude, act in micro habits of alignment, you stop asking for the shift and start living as if it has already occurred. That is the moment collapse stabilizes. That is when reality cannot resist you because you are no longer waiting for it. You are it. But here's the paradox. Ease is not passivity. It does not mean doing nothing. It means removing resistance so that your actions flow naturally from who you are. When identity changes, behavior changes effortlessly. The non-smoker does not fight cigarettes. The athlete does not argue with training. The creator does not struggle to create. They simply embody their state, and the collapse follows. Living the ease of shifting means becoming the version of yourself for whom the desired reality is normal, not extraordinary. It means normalizing the miraculous until it becomes inevitable. Consider what happens when you carry this perspective into daily life. The ripple grows stronger. Relationships respond without confrontation. Finances reorganize without panic. Health restores without endless fear. You will still take action, but it will no longer feel like grinding. It will feel like flow, like water moving downhill. Others may call it luck. You will know it is coherence, embodied until the field had no choice but to match it. Here's the curiosity loop to leave open in your mind. If shifting is this natural, this easeful, then what has your belief in difficulty cost you? How many realities have been left unchosen because you thought the door was locked, when all along it was waiting for you to open it gently? And more importantly, what will your life look like when you stop demanding effort as proof and begin trusting ease as the path? That question is not rhetorical. It is the invitation you carry forward from this moment on. And if you feel ready to take this deeper, to anchor the ease of shifting into a lived practice rather than just an inspiring idea, there is a next step available to you. I created a guide called Awaken Your Quantum Power, designed to take everything we've explored here and ground it into daily application. Alongside it, you'll find a practical companion that walks you through exercises, rituals, and frameworks to embody collapse with simplicity and consistency. The link is in the pinned comment. Treat it as the continuation of this journey, not as more information to consume, but as a set of tools to help you live what you now understand. Shifting isn't magic, and it's easier than you think, because in the end, the most powerful shifts are not loud. They do not demand struggle. They arrive quietly, naturally, inevitably, when you decide that the ease of becoming is enough.